So, a person whose first moniker is Stoned said to a listener to the call in the podcast or video called Saying No to Marriage, Daniel, just go your own way. Avoid all the bullshit of raising kids and getting married. Live a life free without all the obligations. You will be far better off without having your resources sucked out from under you by some woman. Stefan should really be advising all these guys to go their own way. Well, nobody has to have kids, of course. Not having kids is not a violation of the non-aggression principle. You're not initiating force against anyone. But I've read a lot of Jung, Carl Gustav Jung, a fairly famed psychoanalyst. And he said something that I read in my 20s. This is me, in my 20s. I went on vacation for 2 weeks with all the books I'd wanted to read that year. It was just great. And Jung was saying, so your first half of life is around striving and creating and working hard and being ambitious. But you also have to prepare for the second half of your life, which is to some degree about accepting where you are. You know, you get to sort of 40 or 50, and after that, you're not going to be a ballet dancer. You're not going to be a linebacker. You're not going to be a rock star. You're just, you know, there's just an acceptance of where things are. And one of the great challenges of youth is not being able to see over the hill to the other side of life. And when you're young, you get a lot of socializing from going to school, from going to work, from going to clubs, from going to restaurants, from dating. You just meet a lot of new people all the time. In the second half of your life, you know, when you're like 55, you're not going to a lot of clubs, right? And it's really hard to meet people, especially really good, high-quality people, because the good, high-quality people already have a circle of friends that are already married, and they don't necessarily want to invite someone that they don't really know that well into their circle. So the second half of life, you know, without marriage, without kids, it can be a pretty bony, stony, and destitute affair. Lonely, and we're social animals, right? I mean, to be alone is very painful, and to be ostracized is extremely painful for a lot of people. And so it is important to try and work in the first half of your life to build relationships that will sustain you in the last half of your life. You know, in the last half of your life, you get sick, you forget things, you are less physically attractive as time goes forward, especially if you buy high-def cameras to reveal all of your ancient Martian liver spots on your forehead. So you just need to build your relationships up in the first half of your life, invest and create those relationships, and pour your heart and your soul and your love and your care, your concern, your support into those relationships. And then you reap the rewards really in the second half of your life. And I think that's really an important thing. And when you're young, I mean, that all just seems like forever and a day away. I get that. I remember when I was growing up thinking, wow, you know, the year 2000, I'll be 34. That just seems like forever away. And now I'm almost 15 years past that. And time marches on. And if you're lucky, it drags you by the hair with it. So just remember about the second half of your life. Plan for the second half of your life. And there is, of course, it's easier. You know, I haven't written really a long book since my daughter was born 6 years ago, because I'm plowing time, energy, and effort into being a parent. And would it be easier sometimes? Sure. Yeah. My daughter woke up last night at 1:30 in the morning, and I had to sit with her and help her get back. I mean, yeah, you get tired. And so these are investments that you make, though, like saving your money for retirement, that you make in order to have a happier and more fulfilled and better companioned life when you are older. The number of quality people you can have relationships with goes down over time. So when you're young and have all the time in the world, and you're at the peak of your physical attractiveness and so on, yeah, I mean, you can meet, but those quality people, they get hoovered up by others and get into their own relationships. And just don't be that cat lady in her 60s. Don't be the guy who goes to Starbucks because he needs to be around carbon-based life forms that exhale carbon dioxide. I mean, just don't be the person who is lonely. Because, you know, if you haven't gotten married, you don't have to have kids. I mean, I think it's great to have kids. Kids are like amazing and wonderful and fantastic and challenging and time consuming. But, and of course, everyone who's alive has benefited from their parents' desire to have children. So saying, well, 4 billion years of evolution stops with me. The DNA ends here. My parents sacrificed for me. I can sacrifice for no one. Well, I don't know. Seems a little selfish. I'll just be honest with you. I'm just being frank with you. It's not immoral. It's not bad. It's not wrong. But if you like being alive, well, pay it forward. You know, bring life to someone else. I mean, you know, not with electricity and zombie juice, but bring life to others. The degree to which you wish to enjoy your life is a degree to which other people would like to exist. The degree to which you would feel sad if you were about to die is the degree to which you are, by denying life, you're creating, in a sense, a loss of happiness in the world. And again, it's not a moral issue. I'm not trying to guilt or pressure anyone into having kids. It's just that you like being alive, so why not bring that gift to other people? You know, it's sort of like if you're passing a joint. I've never smoked marijuana, but if you're passing a joint, you know, don't bogart it, man. Pass it on down the line. Pass the duchy on the left-hand side, I believe, as the ancient Gregorian chant goes. And it's like life, you know, don't bogart that life. You know, pass it down, pay it forward. And I think it will make things better for you. And it's hard to see when you're in your 20s or maybe even your early 30s, but if you haven't settled down and got some deep, meaningful relationships, and the romantic one is pretty key, and certainly co-parenting is even deeper, you know, you're going to live to 80 or 90. If you haven't got those things by your late 40s, early 50s, certainly for women, it's too late. You got another 40 years to go, man. You got 40 years to go. And most other people are paired off, and there's only so much screen time you can do before you just don't feel like getting out of bed anymore. Just prepare for the second half of your life. We do that with nutrition, try not to gain weight. We do that with exercise to keep our bones strong. Just prepare a little bit for the second half of life. And I'm sorry to be a nag about it, and I'm not trying to guilt or pressure. I'm just telling you the facts as I see them. This is a response to a video I made on 50 Shades of Grey, which we can link below. Fleet said, remember, boys and girls, it's perfectly okay to be a sexual predator as long as you have tons of money. It's easy to see why so many feminists love this book. Well, that is, you know, for those who don't know, 50 Shades of Grey is about a woman's sexual subjugation to a sadistic sadomasochist fellow who's incredibly rich and young and hot and powerful and this, that, and the other. Yes, there are significant proportions. I think it's 2/3 of women have rape or ravishment fantasies where the man overpowers them and has sex with them. And that is giving the man dominance and power is part of the dominant submissive aspect of S&M. And this, of course, can happen in a reverse gender as well. But the reality is that it makes sense biologically. You know, like it or not, it makes sense biologically. The R versus K reproductive strategy is really hard to look at society without that lens and have it come into focus. So the R reproductive strategy, which is fairly well established and I think is the norm, is spray and pray. Sex with a lot of people and don't invest much, if anything, into your kids and just hope that they reach maturity and that's how you reproduce your genes. And that's highly appropriate to a situation of war, of conflict, of scarcity, of disease, of famine, and so on. So if there's a plague going on, then it just makes sense to have a lot of kids because a lot of the kids are going to die, but this way you get, whereas if you just have 1 or 2 kids, plague's probably going to get them, so you know, you're just not going to reproduce. So in times of social conflict and war and shortage and famine and so on, then the R reproductive strategy makes sense. The K reproductive strategy is have fewer kids, but invest more into them. And that's a different kind of strategy. Now, our society has been moving from the K reproductive strategy, which is fewer kids and more investment into the kids, into the R reproductive strategy. This has really been the effect of the welfare state. And I won't go into all the reasons for that now, but I just want to make that sort of correlation. And so a book which would be unfathomable in the 1950s as a sort of popular, it's 100 million downloads or readings or whatever, it makes perfect sense now. And the degree to which women have rape fantasies or ravishment fantasies is the degree to which they're biologically programmed to go through the R strategy, right? To go through the short-term investment, little low investment, and lots of kids strategy. This, of course, has a lot to do with growing up without a father. If you grow up without a father, then your body, as a woman, as a girl, your body is then programmed for an R reproductive strategy. You know, that's just part of the way that the body evolves in the moment, not intergenerationally, but based upon environmental cues. This is why girls without fathers experience higher rates of promiscuity and also achieve menses or menstruation earlier and so on. Because if there's no father around, we assume that the body assumes we're in a time of conflict or war, and you simply can't expect for a male provider to be around, and therefore you need to get a lot of men interested in you. The hypersexuality of all of this has gone on. So anyway, it's a long, complicated topic, but it makes sense that this is where female sexuality is. And of course, there have been problems for male sexuality as well, but this book really seems to be appealing to women. So I think this is why this is happening. All right, let's move on to one last question. My statement, I've never met a white racist man, and this Mani said, and Setefan, knowed as to say, I agree with you. I stopped watching this pathetic video at that point. Very sad. Setefan Molyneux. And somebody replied, that's crazy. He is playing lying there. Let's be honest about things. Well, I mean, I'm sorry if my honesty is troubling or upsetting to people, but I've traveled a lot around this world and I've never actually met a racist white man. I've met very few racists as a whole. I do see them online. I was talking about people I've met in person, but I just haven't. I haven't had anyone I've ever met who has sat down with me and said, well, you know, this particular group is really inferior and this particular group is really inferior and we are the best and in every conceivable way. And I just never met anyone like that. I'm not saying racism doesn't exist. Of course it does. I'm just saying I've never been exposed to racism, certainly from a white man. And the fact that people can't believe I haven't met a racist white man is kind of racist, because it's assuming that there just must be so many racist white men that I can't possibly have gotten to the age of 48 without having met a lot of them. It's pretty racist, right? Like if somebody said, well, I've never met a black guy who steals, I'd be like, oh, come on. What a liar you are. Of course you've met a black guy who's confessed to theft. Of course you have, because that's what black guys do. So naturally, you must have, right? I mean, that would be pretty racist, right? But it's hard to see racism against whites because propaganda. So, yeah, I'm sorry, stand by it. Never met a racist white man. I'm really trying to think of racists I may have met in my life from other genders and other, I can't really think of any. And, so I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I was simply saying I've not met it. And you'd think for something that's supposed to be so systemic, like racism, particularly white male racism, you'd think I'd have caught a hint of it somewhere or other. But no. So I was simply reporting my empirical experience, which I stand by. I wasn't lying. And the fact that people can't believe that I haven't met a racist white man, I actually think I've now met some racists, particularly against white men.